Welcome to All Worn Out. I'm your host, Warren Meredith. On the show today, Victoria Stigliano-Dzuban. She's a podcast host. Her show, The Animal Files, has been around for 4 years, and it's very cool. She's also a radio host over at whitehorseradio.net. Her show, Soul of Rock with Victoria D, features music you might know and love. Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Worn Out. It's a podcast about music. It's a podcast about what you're passionate about. And it's a podcast about what our guest is passionate about. Today, we are very lucky, fortunate, excited to bring on the very incredible, the spiritual, the animal blessed. I don't know how to describe it. The music fiend. She is Victoria Stigliano-Dzuban, or better known as Victoria D.
Yep. That's me. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Hey, at least we're getting involved, right? I mean,
Yep.
Who's a master? I mean, that's what I want to get into with you about several things today, because you are a jack of all trades, but I'm sensing some mastery and maybe at different things as well. So first I'll start off with a little story for everybody. So, of course, if you know who I am, then you know I'm in a band and that I play Southern rock music in that band. And if you don't know that, then you can go listen to that music and find it. And it's called Taming Sorry. You can go look it up. And I never normally say this, but the reason I am is because Victoria D here has been an incredible supporter over the years, putting us on her Soul of Rock with Victoria D, and this taking place on whitehorseradio.net. And I'm so grateful. And I know that I have band members who are also very grateful. And I was looking and I saw that you were featuring a song not too long ago by Sunday Riot Club. And I think you also might have mentioned Evil Creek as well, featuring some of their music. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Got to give musicians a voice.
And where are you from for our listeners?
That's kind of a loaded question. Well, right now I'm living in New York. I've been in New York for 20, no, probably going on 30, close to 30 years. I moved here in 96.
Okay.
But I've lived in Pennsylvania and New York. And when I was really little, North Carolina, Africa, a little bit of everywhere.
What? I mean,
yeah.
It's just such a melange of different places. That's fantastic. So why were you traveling around a lot? Were you an army brat? Were you...
In the first part of my life, yes. My dad was stationed in at that time it was Ethiopia during the Vietnam War. And so my mom flew over to live with him when she was 6 months pregnant with me. So I was born over in Ethiopia, which is now Eritrea, where I was born. And then he was stationed in North Carolina, I think at Fort Bragg. And then when he left the army, we moved back up to where he's from and my mom's from, which is New Jersey.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. And yeah, like the whole New Jersey thing as well. I mean, I'm such a silly Canadian. I mean, right now, all I'm thinking in my mind is, man, she might know The Sopranos. And if she does, I'm in really big trouble. And, you know, it's like, you're probably not even near the same neighborhood or anything like that. But no, see, but us Canadians, it's like people will say, like, Americans say things like, oh, the Americans think about polar bears in Canada and igloos and this and that. Well, we're the same. We pretty much just assume that everything in America is Law and Order and, you know, certain television shows. We're no better. We're the same.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more north from where Sopranos was actually supposedly set.
But with the last name like Stigliano, I had to be, you know, it does spark the imagination, right? So you do a podcast, But before I get into the podcast, I guess I'll go with the radio thing first because we were
Okay.
talking about it. So you are a radio host. Soul of Rock is your name of your show since 2021. And this takes place Wednesdays at 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'm just saying that because most of our viewers right now are in the Eastern time zone. But it's actually, you're doing this later in the evening. This is taking like 9 to 11.
Yes.
Yeah. So are you getting a bit, do you swear? Are you racy at this time?
No. No,
Okay.
I'm not really like that in general. Every once in a while, I might play a song that I didn't realize there was a curse word in there. But I do try to keep it clean because Soul of White Horse Radio is trying to build their station on a local model. So they want to they don't want to have the internet radio kind of persona. They want to be a local on the ground type radio station. And so we kind of keep it clean because we want to keep it family friendly.
Awesome. And a lot of the music on there, I noticed it is 70s rock based, but I saw Danko Jones.
Mhm.
How did you come to find Danko Jones?
Oh, well, when I started the show, I wanted to make sure that I gave, like I said before, gave musicians a voice that aren't getting played on the radio.
Mm.
Um, and I love my 70s and 80s rock. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, so we love our rock. But I wanted to make sure that some of these great new bands that are coming out also get airplay because they're not getting airplay. They're stuck to Spotify and they're stuck to hopefully, getting views on YouTube. And I didn't think that was very fair. So being in a very special place, being internet radio and having the I guess the ability to play all recorded music, I'm like, okay, I want to give all of these bands that I've never heard of that are really good a voice. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how my show has been evolving. So I pretty much play everything from, I played a song from 1968 just last week, all the way up to songs that were just released today.
Very cool. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that is the reality of today's world is that we can pick and choose the genre. We can pick and choose what we want to present.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of what the biggest artists in the world are doing right now. They're deciding, oh, I'll do some country or I'll do some hip hop and then back into rock. And it's just an interesting time
Yeah.
where, yeah, it was different before. I think you used to have to commit to a character before. And people like Elvis set that example where, it was just stay in your lane, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
you only come out if you're doing something incredible like Aerosmith meets Run DMC. Like it's hard for me to accept people just jumping over boundaries, like I come from that world where Liberace existed and he wasn't going to change his stripes or
No.
his coat of feathers anytime soon. So yeah, I want to ask you about this local music. I think did we probably meet in the beginning on Twitter because you do have a
Yeah.
Twitter presence, eh?
Yeah. Well, I did.
Okay.
I once Elon kind of destroyed that platform. I'm still there as a placeholder, but I don't use it.
Hmm.
So I've shifted over to Facebook. But yes, we first met on Twitter, and I met Mark from your management company
Ah,
on
yeah,
Twitter.
yeah, yeah. Mark, good guy. And yeah, and what I gotta say is like thank you so much, for the comments on the videos and yeah, all the support. It's so appreciated. And I just wish more people were like you. Everyone out there listening, take the example from Victoria. Uh, so did you always want to be a radio host? Is this something you dreamt about doing when you were young?
No, actually, I never even crossed my mind. It basically just fell in my lap in
Really?
2021. Yeah, and it was one of those things, like go through moments of your life when you just say yes. no matter how scared you are, you just say yes. I basically the podcast started first, and my co-host um, knew from her network one of the presenters at Whitehorse, and then he wanted to interview me. And he heard my voice. He's like, you would be good on radio. Would you like to be on radio? And I was like, well, okay, sure. And so he just went to his buddies. He was already on Whitehorse at the time, and he went to my boss and my friend Chris, who's one of the co-owners, and I met with them, and they didn't have a rock show, and they said, sure, come on, I'll train you. And it literally happened within a period of 3 months of me meeting my colleague David, who is based in Edmonton, and having my first show. And I just hit my 3-year anniversary. So September 1st, September of 2021 was my very first rock show. And I just hit the 3-year mark.
Congratulations.
And I'm loving it. I've loved every second of it. It's a lot of work, but I love it.
That's so cool. And I love that you mentioned the voice off the bat, because yeah, I started listening to your podcast, and which is amazing, by the way. And
thank you.
Everybody should check it out. I think it's quite fascinating. It's called The Animal Files. Mm-hmm. And you can find it on all platforms, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's so cool. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, wow, the voices, she sounds so professional. This sounds so good. And like, yeah, I was like blown away by it. And
thank you.
Yeah. So that was very impressive. Let me ask you this. When did you first realize your connection to music? What's your earliest memory that you can recall where music, maybe it's a song, a popular song, or some kind of powerful memory in your youth or childhood for music?
Well, I come from, theater parents. So my first 8 years, my parents were always on stage doing musicals. So I was always exposed to that. But I would say probably my first real memory was ABBA.
ABBA?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. I think I was like 5 years old or something like that. And my sister was a year and 8 months younger than me. We would just take candlesticks and we would sing on our coffee table I still have in my living room. I call it the stage, and we would just dance on the coffee table and sing to ABBA.
That's so awesome.
So that was probably my very first memory. And then of course, me being, a woman of a certain age, I liked a little bit of disco. So Casey and Sunshine Band. And then I got into Shauna Knox. My dad was big into 50s and 60s music. And so when I found Shauna Knox, the late 70s, I'm here like, 8, 9 years old. And all of a sudden there's these guys on stage doing these crazy things, singing all of these like, oldies music. And I just fell in love. And that was like the first 10 years of my life, ABBA and Shauna Knox.
That's amazing. And I think it's so fascinating about how with music, it seems like, there was the barbershop quartet and it was very popular. And I guess that derived from the choir. So I guess the choir was popular. It turned into this quartet thing of harmonies. And then that moved on until I think people started favoring one person's voice more than the other. Which is really fascinating because then they were trying to the industry was probably playing these poor guys against each other and, wrecking up these great harmonies, which in the end are in all great music anyways. If you're making a song, you make sure you put that stuff in there if you can.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It's important. but yeah, I think that's really cool I think that might be kind of how that worked, but who knows?
I know.
There's so many different paths, right? And so many different genres.
Exactly. And fun fact, I'm still a Shauna Knox fan, and I just saw them live a few years ago. So there you go.
That's awesome. You see, it's like these childhood memories that are powerful that won't ever leave us. It's core. And I find if once we start thinking about them, it's like, oh, wow, that was a very powerful memory, because we tend to only hold on to memories, sadly, if they're very upsetting, or if they're very overwhelmingly joyous. So music can do that. Music can do
Oh,
that
totally.
throughout our lives, right?
Oh yeah. Music just defined my life. I can hear a song and I'm back to that time period, what I was doing and whatever. It's magical to me. And
Yes.
still I carry those things today. I'll hear a song that was like really popular in like 1981 and I'm back to my 11-year-old self,
Yeah.
just
I wanted to also give you kudos because on your page, and I'm reading up about you, a lot of people would be afraid to talk about certain things, but you are not. And
no.
you'll state a basic political statement, which I thought was super non-offensive and,
Mhm.
very appealing to me personally. And, you even talk about religion. And when did you come to terms with this connection with spirituality?
I think I was kind of forced into it. I mean, I was always spiritual in a sense. I was raised in the Mormon church and I still carry a lot of those values with me today. But I think when I hit my, I don't know, mid to late 20s, I started struggling a lot. And I am a big believer in taking responsibility for yourself. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to try to fix this
Hmm.
so I can manage things. And that's when I started really getting into, I guess, the meat and potatoes on spirituality. And then in my 30s, I got diagnosed ADHD. So I'm a late diagnosed ADHDer. And
Mhm.
also it looks like I'm a late diagnosed autistic person too. But I was really struggling in my early 30s with ADHD. I was having a lot of paralysis. I couldn't function. And so I basically forced myself to step out and to figure this out because I don't believe ADHD is, it's not a disorder. It's just the way your brain works. So I had to work with my brain and I had to learn skills, and that just slowly moved me closer and closer into a more spiritual mindset. And then when I hit 40, I kind of had a midlife crisis, and then that even spurred me even more so because I wasn't going to accept um, not being able to accomplish things. Like I had to take responsibility for myself, and so I started doing that. And then I started playing with making jewelry with crystals and gemstones, and then that just evolved into being a life coach and an enlightenment teacher. And yeah, I was forced into it basically, but it is the best thing best path I ever took.
It almost sounds the way you're describing it, the way a priest describes a calling, the way that you were
Yeah.
forced into it, or like it's a path that you feel like you were kind of guided along. As time progressed, it marched you to where you needed to be spiritually, and
Yeah.
that's very cool. And I'm just reading about you today, and I felt silly. I didn't know this cool stuff about you. But yeah, you are a rock and roll mystic
Yes.
and an alchemist and an enlightenment teacher and an animal spirituality facilitator. And what
Yes.
I want to ask about that is I was reading about how you had an early experience with baby birds and
Hmm.
rescuing them. How old were you when that happened?
I think I was probably about 5.
And you had one of them
Yeah.
survive?
Yeah. Yeah. Robbie survived. And even after we left that area, Robbie still hung around our yard and um, became friends with our next door neighbors.
Ah, yeah, he trusted people, eh? That's
Yeah.
that's so fascinating. Well, I mean, I had a similar experience, but the babies didn't survive.
Oh,
They were on the
oh,
they were on the road, and it was sad, but my dad helped me and my sister put them into a box, and it at least had a
oh.
nice night, but it didn't make it. And one other time I can remember a wild uh chipmunk that came out of a bush and basically showed itself to be injured and needing help.
Oh,
And it came to us basically. So it's interesting. Like animals, I adore them. I have a 20-year-old cat who's been with me since I was like 19 years old.
oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, we've been through so much. And I definitely feel like she's my soulmate in many ways. Like I wouldn't be here without her. Like
They do that to you.
she sleeps beside me every night. She's learned how to say my name.
Oh,
Yeah, my mom and my sister and my family, they can't believe it, but she'll just start going, Warren, Warren. And it's pretty obvious that she's trying to copy how my mom would yell my name out
yeah, that's so
many years
sweet.
ago. Yeah. So I'm a huge animal lover. My dog Sasha, who likes to interrupt the podcast, she's
She's
asleep.
beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you. She's asleep on the floor beside me right now. And yeah, so animals are amazing. And I've been watching Ants Canada channel on YouTube, and it's been helping me get closer to understanding reptiles and
Mm.
and respecting and loving reptiles, because I've had a hard time with snakes and that kind of thing. Do you, or you just have a connection with all animals?
It's pretty much all animals. When I was a kid, I used to bring snakes home. And my mom, if they were too big, my mom would be like, go put that back. It's a little too big. So, that was me. Crayfish, toads. I was basically very much a tom girl or tomboy. Yeah, tomboy. But yeah, no, I've always, even insects. I mean, I've been able to um coerce flies out of my house just by talking to them. So it's just been
Mm.
one of those things. And I, unfortunately, as an arachnophobe, it's not very cool, but I do have spiders as my animal guides. So that's been interesting, but they keep me on the straight and narrow.
Like spiders scare me and they creep me out too, but like Spider-Man was always my favorite. I always liked him more than even Batman, who was a close second. But I mean, to me, like Superman was ridiculous. It's way too over the top. I love the abilities of the spider, the fact that it spins web and all the abilities that it has in trapping and different versions of spiders. And
well, the folklore behind spiders is fascinating. I mean, they're the creators of our galaxy. They're creators of the world. They're creators of language. They're, as again, I'm still petrified of them. And the spiders that chose to be around me the most are actually the only poisonous spiders we have in this area. But they've never bitten anybody in my family. So they're very cool, and they're very respectful in that way. But if you really dive into the archetype of a spider, they're fascinating. They're absolutely fascinating. And I could sit there and watch them build a web, but just don't be next to me on the couch because then I'll freak out.
I've got a huge orb weaver in the window right outside my bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
And I love opening the blinds up in the morning and looking at her. But as soon as I don't want to be close to her, really. Like that glass, I'm happy it's there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like appreciating her from that safety.
Yeah.
Which I know is silly, but still, they say some spiders do attack humans, like little like that. Just their nature.
My spiders are the yellow sac, and if they feel threatened, they attack instead of retreat. So they don't build webs. They're wandering spiders, so they can get a little bit scary. But again, I'm an animal spirituality facilitator, so I've been able to like create a relationship with them, and so they listen really well, and they're very respectful unless I'm not doing what I'm told. And then they'll show up and they'll actually be in my face. Like they'll be walking right on here. Like, and I'll be like, dude, and I'll yell at them, and then, and then they'll go off and do their thing.
Could you talk to the house centipedes that live here?
Oh, they don't listen.
Because I think they're really rude. And honestly, I'll be here in the middle of the night watching some nice show, calmly relaxed and with a hot cocoa. And all of a sudden in runs some terror nightmare. And oh, and
Oh, they
and
creep me out. They creep me out.
I,
I just tell them, I'm like, look, you want to be in this house? You belong in the cellar, but I have a cat and she likes you. So
oh
it's up to you.
gosh. So this love and this fascination of animals, I think it helped spur on a podcast that you founded in 2021, The Animal Files, exposing the truth, science, and spirituality of pet care.
Mhm.
And like I was saying before, I think it sounds great and the topic's great. And the co host banter is fantastic. It feels really natural.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to highly advise everyone, if you love animals and if you love spirituality, and if you have an open mind, I would definitely advise checking this podcast out. Um, yeah. So tell me about that. Tell me about how it came to be.
Well, actually, we actually started at the end of 2020. Um, I had been, there was a point in my coaching, as I was trying to become a coach, where I was trying to network with people, and I joined this one Facebook group, and then one of the people that I met, firstly, was my co-host Miranda, and we started doing masterminds to help each other. And then a year or so after that, she goes, would you want to do a podcast? And of course, I just say yes, no matter whether I have experience or not. So I said, oh my goodness, yes. And so we started the podcast, and we're just about ready to end our fourth season. So
Hmm.
it's been really cool. And she is uh, an animal health specialist, which is basically a vet tech. And I have been doing energy work. I'm a healing touch for animals practitioner. So I've been doing energy work on animals, and we just combined the two. And I'm also, I guess I could call myself a death doula. I've helped transition a lot of animals.
Mm.
And I make sure that their chakras are all clear and their energies are clear so they can pass with a clean slate, basically. And we just combined that, and my experience with cats, because I'm like the resident cat whisperer. um I just keep bringing my experiences, because I've had a lot of interesting experiences that are pretty much not book experiences. Like, they're not out of the book.
Mm.
They're different. They're interesting things that I've come across. And since I am so much a helicopter mom, I've learned a lot about illness and transition and food and nutrition, all that stuff. So yeah, we just combined the two, her science knowledge, my energy and spiritual knowledge, and yeah, we're pretty proud of what we built.
Well, I think that's really cool. Yeah, combining two different viewpoints and, maybe even aligning them, I think is a very interesting and a good idea. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, people have to be open-minded, I think, or they should be. And I mean, gosh, tell me that an animal, if that you have opened your heart to, hasn't impacted your life
Oh my goodness.
in the most spiritual of ways. And if you say that it has, then anything is possible there, just
Exactly.
with that
Yeah.
right there. And in energy, yeah, folks, it's very real. And call it chi, call it chakra, whatever it might be. Zen, I don't know, there's many.
There's a lot of things. I mean,
Right.
animals do communicate via telepathy. And if you can hone that, you can actually like really build the relationship with your animal in such a deep and centered way. And
Yeah.
I guess that's the best words I can say it, like your family. You're like you're together. They're not just your property or your cat or your dog. They're it's a relationship.
Are people ever rude to you about this? Are people ever skeptical?
I haven't come across any of that. I mean, I every once in a while somebody will say something that's like the norm, like, yeah, they just do the cat's a cat, dog's a dog.
Mm,
But if you live with them, they're not.
right.
And you
Okay.
can't allow, like, there's a lot of people that think cats are just unsociable creatures, but that's only because you let them be that way. and you think that that's how they're going to be, so you're not interacting with them. Cats are
Yeah.
extremely social. They may not be like a dog, but try to find me some person who owns a cat that cat's not in the same room with them almost all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I really wasn't a cat person until I had one really become important to me and show me things. And
Yeah.
all my dogs have had very different, unique personalities and
Mhm.
traits. And, you know, gosh, just yeah, I really think they're very special. And uh yeah, I guess what I got from that is that some people you have encountered some people who are dismissive, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's the
Um,
best word.
but I mean, I'm glad that it's not affecting you and that you just do your thing, and that's what I would definitely recommend. And screw the doubters, screw the haters.
Yep, yep.
And
And if you doubt but you have a question, I'll still open and I'll still help you because the animals have told me many, many things over the years, and I've learned many, many things over the years, and I'm happy to help you be a better human to your animal.
one time when I was in theater school, I think in the first week they were like, go and hug the tree. Everyone find a tree and hug the tree
Yep.
and release to the tree. Let it have the energy, and it will return the energy to you.
Yeah.
And all that type of thing. And for some of us who were in our early 20s, right, a lot of what was going on was very woo, it's out there. And you
Hmm.
know uh can we handle it? Can we wrap our fragile little minds around what's
Yeah.
being handed out? So I do think we do need spiritual coaches and spiritual guides to help us understand things. And yeah, like how does one go about becoming like a Reiki master teacher? Like how does that process begin? Do you have to find a master, or does the master find you?
um No, you could find the master, but you have to make sure that that master comes highly recommended. You don't want to just go to anybody because there's a lot of people out there that jump on the bandwagon. They're basically grifters. So you want to
Mm,
make sure you're going to somebody who can really teach you the ins and outs of the history of Reiki, and also the use of Reiki. And the one thing is, I'm sure there's courses out there that you just take a course and they'll just do whatever. That's not how it works. You have to actually have a practicum. Like you have to go out and work on people to get to the master level. Actually, any level, you should do work. Like level 1, you do work on yourself. Level 2, you can do work on friends. Level 3, that's when you can start
mm.
treating other people. When you're a master, you can teach that. I personally have not taught Reiki per se. I've taught energy work. Maybe down the line that'll come, but yeah, at least I have the attunements. I have the certificate. Went through the training. Um,
I had how do I say this? So I've had visions. I don't know if you've seen any of the other certain podcasts. So the one I did with John Ryu, where I was a little bit drinking a little bit, and I started getting emotional because as soon as I drink, the trauma
yeah,
will come through immediately. And I'll just apologize to people like, oh, that came out again, did it? Okay, I'm sorry about that.
nothing
But
wrong with it.
I
Nothing wrong with
ex
it.
thank you. And I experienced some wild things during that time period where I was literally praying or asking um the creator or whatever to stop it. I
Hmm.
wanted it to go away, and I knew it was not mental illness. I do have mental illness. I'm very aware of what I do suffer from. So
Hmm.
so that in that regard, I was like, my goodness me, because when I was going up the stairs in that night to leave in that situation, and I was approaching great danger unknowingly, I heard a voice that was not my own head voice, and I'd never heard that before.
Yeah.
And it was quite distinctive and quite like, stop, don't go alone, don't go alone. And then it showed me an image of my car tire being slashed. And
Mm.
I went back downstairs immediately, told the people what just happened to me. And they were like, "Oh, Warren, you're overreacting." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no.
No.
Sorry, what just happened to me? Super bizarre. You need to come with me." And about 5 people came outside with me, and yes, the tire was slashed. And yes, there was a murderer waiting for me in a car
Wow.
on that road, waiting to do something to me at the very least. So I know from that experience alone, uh, even if you called it spiritual intuition, it was way too powerful throughout my body
Yeah.
in a certain, like, I felt a push. I felt like there was another presence
I'm getting
giving,
goosebumps.
right, right,
Yeah.
and
No, that
so
wasn't your intuition. That was one of your guides
yeah,
protecting you.
I think so. I really really believe it. And then later on, after the tragedy occurred, and I was very sad. Um, I had met this person who was a friend of a friend, and I was not like close to them whatsoever. But one night I had a dream, and this person was crying out in a bathroom, and they were really sad, and they were like dying.
Mm.
Yeah. And so I went to my friend's house like 2 days later, and I was like, "Hey guys, like this happened and in my dream, like Tristan, he's gone in my dream, like it was horrifying." And they were like, "He died. Like he killed
Oh my
himself."
goodness.
Yeah, and that happened like within weeks of, or months at the longest, of, the other trauma where I felt there was an awakening inside of me.
Hmm.
And I was kind of like, "Whoa, okay, I don't want this." Like that was like I couldn't handle that trauma after the other. So I'm very
Yeah.
open-minded. I'm very very open-minded. I've been through situations, and if people are skeptical about it or judgmental, I would just say think back in your life, and I'll bet you have a memory similar to
Oh
what I'm
yeah.
describing right now. And yeah,
Absolutely.
like, yeah, we can explain it away, or we can listen to it like in the moment for what it was.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, the more you listen to that voice, even if it sounds like it's your own, if it feels, I always say, if it feels light, it's important. Or important to your positive progress. If it feels heavy, it could be a warning, or it's not for you. So being able to feel into those thoughts, those voices, those feelings really can help you as a 3D being on this planet to move to your next level.
Hmm.
And the more you ignore it and say, "Nah, I'm just losing my mind," that's when you end up finding that things start getting a little bit more sluggish.
Hmm.
But I want to say one thing: if you ignore, there will be one time that you can't ignore it, because it will just getting louder and louder. It'll start as a hum, and then it'll start to be a little beat, and then next thing you know it, you're got a gong in your head. And you need to start paying attention to it, because they're not gonna stop.
Yeah, yeah.
If you need to do something, if you need to be somewhere, or if you need to follow a path, it's not going to stop until it gets you closer to that path.
Hmm. Definitely. That's fascinating. That's really cool, and makes me think about how there was a time in my 20s when I thought I had to witness darkness. Like I had the thought in my head
Mm-hmm.
that I will never understand darkness if I don't witness it, at the very least. And then being like, no, you shouldn't think that way. You shouldn't invite that. And then by the time I was 27, I had a gun to my head, and
Yeah, and you had experienced
I'd
the
had
darkness. Yeah.
experienced the darkness. Do you know what I mean? And it shows itself. So I think it's very real. Again, like, as a kid, you
Yeah.
might be watching Lord of the Rings or whatever it is, and it's referencing these archetypes. Or
Those archetypes are real.
oh yeah, they're ancient. They're super super ancient.
Yep.
And I don't disagree with that. Like when people want to argue about our like our ancient archetypes and stories and where they come from, and it's like some of that it basically comes from a truth. You go
Yeah.
back, there is a truth. I don't know how big it is or how small it is, but there's a truth that it came from,
Yep.
and otherwise it wouldn't be here now. So I find that really fascinating. What is your some of your favorite rock bands? Because
Oh
like
gosh.
in rock music, because
The
you've done
list long.
is there any though that you grew up that like really got you going? Some people on here, what gets referenced,
Oh, you mean my gateway drug?
exactly. Yeah, tell me about your gateway rock drugs.
Def Leppard.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Def Leppard was my gateway, and then there was Rush and Motley Crue, and that was it. I was done. I was done. I was like a rock chick for life. But Def Leppard did it. When I heard Pyromania for the first time, I was like, "That's it. I'm done."
Wow, interesting.
And to
I'm
this day, I'm like the hugest Def Leppard fan. I
definitely.
just love it. And people will say, well, they haven't been good since Hysteria. I'm like, there are gems on every single album. All you got to do is listen to it.
That this is a thing I talk about on here with musicians all the time, and that is the game of hype. And if
Yep.
you want to play that game and get into that game, good luck. I've
Mm-hmm.
played it. I've played it as hard as I could, and it's not easy, and it's fun. It's a lot
Yeah.
of fun, but you learn. You learn like people are listening to things based on people telling them to. And
Yeah.
they listen to things based on magazine articles that are now on the internet and no long,
Mm-hmm.
everything is just in our faces, in our phones all the time. What's cutting through the madness?
Yeah.
And part of the reason I wanted to do this podcast is I wanted to feature musicians because I've worked with so many over the years. And I just was like, I love them all and they have such great stories. And
Yeah.
I'd love to help tell them, you know what I mean? So it's similar to you wanting to give musicians a place
Yeah.
to be heard.
Yeah. And I even try to give musicians that have been around for 50 years that are still releasing new music a voice too. So
Yeah.
I've played the new Beatles song, even though it was AI generated with John's voice and George's voice. I've played the Rolling Stones from their new album. So I try to like give everybody a voice. Like if they've lost it, I may not play it unless it's a song that I'm like, oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Motley Crue fan, but Vince, I'm also a vocalist. So it, if the vocals are not solid, I can't listen to it. And unfortunately,
Oh my
Motley Crue,
God. Oh,
Motley Crue, I can't really listen to the new stuff. The music is amazing,
Victoria,
but Vince's voice,
you're
I
one
feel
of the
bad.
only people that understand me. You just voiced something that I've tried to explain to
Yeah,
people over the years and they get mad at me. And I'll be like, no, I just like the melody has to be strong and like the
yeah,
vocals have to be strong. And like I can listen to metal, I can enjoy metal. Like In Flames, I love it because the melody is so ferocious and
yeah.
it's so beautifully presented in an operatic fashion. And speaking of which, I want to
Mhm.
get into I was reading that you are a former opera singer.
Yes, I am.
When did you start training to be an opera singer?
Never. It was one of those things that I just said yes to. Um, when I first moved to New York, um, the in my church, who somebody who's my friend, he was like the first person I met. Within a year of me moving to New York, he started his own opera company. So he is a professional opera singer. So he'd been singing in all over the world, and he sang in San Jose, California, and all that stuff. Then he moved to New York, and he started the opera company, which is the Taconic Opera. And his first opera was the Marriage of Figaro, and he needed an extra to get their hair washed in one of the scenes. Everybody can remember the song if you're a Bugs Bunny fan. When Bugs Bunny's doing the massaging of Elmer Fudd's head, during
Yes.
that music. Well, that's the
Yes.
song that he needed extras for. So Marriage of Figaro is Mozart. I think Mozart. I'm a little bit rusty on my opera, but yeah, he needed somebody to get their hair washed and to feign all over Figaro. And so I said yes. And so I had my first non-singing role in 1997, and they've been doing 3 performances a year minus COVID. And I was in 3 operas a year, or 2 operas a year, and 1 oratorio a year for 15 years. And so
Wow.
we've done everything. But yeah, and so I just, I have, because I come from a theater family, I have good genes, I guess. My mom's a singer, my dad's a singer. And they're both actors and actresses. So I
How
guess I have it in
much
my blood.
how much of being a vocalist is or can be simply vocal projection?
Oh yeah.
And if you look at vocalists like Jim Morrison, or many others from the 70s, they were doing this. They
Mm-hmm.
were simply using a high level of theatrical vocal, presentation. And it was something my mom taught me when I was very young, when I was doing plays. When you talk about being in the theater family, and I remember being in my first play when I was 6 years old, and I was put into the grade 6 play, and they gave me like a bunch of lines to memorize. So that's where that began. And
Wow.
you know what
Of
I
course, I
mean?
beat you. I was in Showboat at 4.
Dude, Showboat was like one of the first musicals I ever went to the NAC with my grandma.
Oh
And
wow.
I
Yeah.
think so. Well, is Showboat the one where he sings Old Man River?
Yes. Yeah.
That old man river.
Yeah. And of course, I wasn't singing. I was only 4, but still, my sister and I were like little extras.
And the
On
and
stage.
The Figaro, is that like da, 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 da,
Yes.
that one? Yeah. Okay. Good. That's
Yeah. Then he like his
oh
ear
yes.
comes down and massages Elmer Fudd's. Yeah, that song.
Yes
There's
yes.
a lot of, if you're a Bugs Bunny fan, you have heard a lot of the big songs from big operas.
Yeah.
So,
I remember going to see an opera here in Toronto, which is like our Canadian big wazoo city, whatever you want to call it. So when you go to the opera there, we were all dressed up to the nines, and it was fancy. And they had like the words were going across this like screen thing,
mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah, super titles.
yeah, and I was like, oh, that's so trippy. And then but we were drinking too much wine, I think.
Oh,
We were in our early 20s. I watched it all, but by the end I was singing along, I think. And
yeah.
I don't think you're supposed to.
No, no,
No,
no,
you know
no.
what I mean? You're not It's not a sing along, you know what I mean? But I was kind of heading that direction.
Yeah.
But theater school, I wasn't ready for it. I will just put it
Yeah.
that way.
Well, I mean,
Or I
through
was
the
ready for what it was ready to give me.
yeah. Well, for each opera, I got better, because it's such hard work, and you're basically doing vocal aerobics every time you're doing a show, and then having to do it in a different language. That it just basically it. I have to say, it made me a better singer, but it also killed my rock voice. So because I did like to sing to Pat Benatar before I was, my early 20s, and
I
Alana Miles
was
and Pat Benatar, and I can't really do that anymore because I sang opera for too long. So I guess my vocal cords,
That's
I
so
don't know.
ridiculous. I was just about to bring up Pat Benatar. Like
Yeah,
I'm not even joking. Like I'm getting good at this, at like
you
suiting
are.
at picking people's voices to certain characters. Like I'm starting to get it because I can hear the power in your voice. And like I was talking about, if you do opera, you're learning great control.
Yeah,
There is great power, but there's great control. And I didn't really
yeah. I don't need a
understand,
mic. That's basically, I don't
right?
need a mic.
Right? And it's like I didn't really have a great appreciation for it until I like saw Pavarotti kind of like schooling another opera singer who was like supposed to be very good, but
Yeah,
Pavarotti was like, no, 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 no. Do it like this. And then you're like, oh yeah, yep, do it like that. You know what I mean? So like the art is real and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'd advise anyone like dive into anything. Like earlier this year, I dove into sumo wrestling for no reason.
Oh
And
my goodness.
dude, it was freaking cool. And I got into it. You know,
Yeah.
art and history and culture, it's always so amazing. And people shouldn't be afraid
Oh
to get
yeah.
into it.
No, you have to culture yourself. The
And
art comes in so many forms.
opera scares a lot of people away because
Well,
they
it's very, I mean, I had to stop because it was physically demanding.
mm,
Because I was in, for those 15 years, I was in rehearsals 9 months out of the year.
yeah.
That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and to keep doing it over and over again and keep putting
Yeah.
that stress on yourself and on your body.
Yeah. I prefer the non-singing roles. I have done a couple of those now. I haven't done anything in a while, but I was in Il Trovatore, I was in Rigoletto, both non-speaking. And I even was one of the third ladies in the Magic Flute, but that was singing. But that was my only actual, outside of my chorus singing, it's my only lead role.
Is Alana Miles, is she the one who sings Black Velvet? What
Yep.
is, yeah, okay, all right, good. I had her in the right thing. And you know, the reason that came to my head is because of the early days of watching American Idol, like again, probably like 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
But when they were covering that type of stuff, still I find they don't cover it as much anymore.
Yeah, in the early 90s when before opera was even twinkle in my eye. If it ever was a twinkle, I don't know. But but I did try to, I was working in a record store and one of my co-workers, we tried to put a band together. And when we had a couple of rehearsals, they actually attributed my voice to like an Alana Miles type voice.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so
That's really cool. So like opera wise, like so are you a baritone? Are you
Um, I always,
alto?
I am a reluctant mezzo.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That makes
I
sense.
do prefer to sing soprano.
Yeah.
I guess if I had training, I would probably have a pretty wide range. But my breaks are in the place where I am more comfortable in the mezzo soprano role, and I have the power behind that most mezzos have.
Nice.
My general director always wished that I would do more because he's like, because he loves mezzo soprano voices.
So you have like you have a high end, you know, like
I
when
have a
you're
high end, yeah.
yeah, when you're doing like the Atlanta Mile stuff or you're doing like Pat Benatar, she's got range. She definitely
Well, she
goes.
was actually an opera singer before she became a rock singer.
She's got
Yeah,
that crazy range, and
yeah.
everyone knows about Freddie and him getting into opera
Mm-hmm.
towards the end. And gosh, anyone who can do 4 octaves, I mean, just
Yeah, I also have this uncanny ability to like replicate voices like Steelheart and Sebastian Bach from Skid Row, like actually get to those high voices. It's not stressed on my body. I don't have like that whisper falsetto that like Mariah Carey has, but I can mimic like the screeching guitar and I can mimic Sebastian Bach and Steelheart pretty well.
man, he was so talented and
He still is, honestly.
he is.
I saw
But
him live a couple years ago and he nailed every note.
you know, I just what I'm kind of referring to is like in his prime, in his glory, when he was screwing up, what he
Yeah.
had, he could have been like absolutely legendary,
Yeah.
top tier, because vocally he was going for stuff that was really difficult to nail, and he was making it seem quite easy, and he had the looks right, like to
Mm-hmm.
like the crazy looks to boot, with all the marketability, but. I guess that time period and
Well,
all,
I think he and Rachel started having a lot of problems, and
yeah.
I think they must have come to agreement because when I saw a Sebastian live, he was playing all the Skid Row songs because
Mm.
he also was one of the co-writers, like Rachel Wolin was. So they both do the Skid Row music, which I'm kind of glad because being able to hear Skid Row with Sebastian's voice is really important to me. Again, as a vocalist, I mean,
Mm.
the lead singer they have now, he's really good, but he's not Sebastian, and it's not Skid Row.
Yeah. I
you
hear
know?
you. I hear you. And it's like a band I opened for here years ago, the London Choir Boys out of England, and they
Yep.
after like 50 years kicked their singer out. You know, they've been around pretty much since the beginning of the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And after all that time, we're like, yeah, we can't handle it. But like I was saying before when I brought this up, I think it might be a marketing scheme where they're
Yeah.
both benefiting, both bands are benefiting.
Could
Like
be. Yeah.
the one because he brought back people that were kicked out of the band over the years, and so he's with that outfit, like we're the originals. And then the guitar player is with the people that kicked him out, and they're like, no, we're the real choir
Yeah.
boys. And I'm like, okay, well, they're getting hype out of this because otherwise they're
Yeah.
not writing like new hits. We'll put it that way.
I think that happens with a lot of them. I mean, and there's so many. My husband was asking me about this, but there's so many bands that split and then they have these legal troubles. And you wonder how much is caused by the record companies
Mm.
or how much is actually the inner turmoil.
Yeah, relationships are in a band become incredibly difficult. They're interesting. You need to be very clear from the get-go and consistent. And
Mhm.
then you need to do an agreement in writing, a
Yeah.
band agreement. And the sooner you do a band agreement in writing, the better, because you can set expectations clearly for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's necessary. It's really important to start off at least on the same page.
Yeah,
And
I was in a band the end of the aughts. So from 2005 to 2008, and we never had something like that, and I wish we did because
mm,
I think we could have gone a little bit further. Now there was a lot of egos involved, and I was the oldest one, so I was like, I'm not going to handle this stuff. So I left in 2008. But yeah, you got to look at it like a business
yes, all the way. And unless you're
and a
trying to,
family too. Like,
it's a business, it's a family, it's a weird marriage. Uh,
yes.
where the music is the sex, and if the sex is good, the marriage is exciting, and then all the four dudes are hanging around with you, and it's great. And then you have these little song
Yeah.
babies that appear, and then the little song babies, they grow up and they become their own demons, and they do their
Yeah.
own things, and they're out of your control. And then people come
Yeah,
up
we
and
never had that, which is a shame, but we did have, experiences. I mean, we with the band I was with, we actually opened for Metal Church.
nice.
So that was like that's our claim to fame. We
Well,
opened up for Metal Church.
anytime you get to work with professionals at
Yeah.
a working level, it's an achievement,
It
and
was only a one-time thing, but it's because we
and
had the relationship with the club, but still it's a good feeling.
a lot of it is how a lot of life is, taking your opportunity, taking your
Yeah.
chances when you get them. And hopefully everybody knows somebody and they all get an opportunity, but you don't always hit a home run.
Yeah.
The first time that I got asked to open for a Juno winner, and that was like in Canada, that's a big deal. Juno is like
Well,
our,
that's like our American
yeah, Grammy or
yeah.
whatever, but it's not anything. It's, yeah, I'm not trying to say it's a
Well, no,
Grammy,
I
but
think it's the America's the AMAs, which is
yeah.
below Grammys because Grammy tends to be international, but
Yeah.
it's more American.
Yeah. Yeah.
American
Yeah.
Music Awards. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Exactly. And so, yeah, the Junos is a thing where, people will take pride in climbing to that level, or, but I don't know, it's an industry, right? Everyone who
Yeah.
gets, like you said about it being a business, you have to respect that it is always a business.
Hmm.
And when you get hurt or when you feel emotional, it's like, oh, no, that's nothing. No one's out to get you. No one's
Yeah.
down. No one's down on you.
Yeah. You can't be a person who is really affected by rejection and be in the music industry
Mm-mm. And when you
because you're
talk,
going to get rejected 9 times out of 10 before you even have one possible okay.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And then, the hype thing, right? You have to get it. And the bands that you were attracted to first, your gateway bands, they were all masters,
Yes.
absolute masters of the hype game. early on where they
Mhm.
facilitated events, not just like put out a poster, not just said put out a commercial. No, they would orchestrate an event.
Yeah.
And yes, they trashed hotel rooms a lot of the time because they wanted to be on the front cover of that newspaper in the morning, because they
Mhm.
needed to be if they
Yeah.
wanted the radio station to play their song. And they were under these yeah, that's what people have to realize. Bands are always buying into
It
this.
was so different back then. So different.
The music video, right? It was a weapon, and everyone was trying to outdo one another and be more artistic than the other.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget watching Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins guy, the way he loves himself so much and so proud of the music videos that he made in the 90s. And I'm like, yes, tonight is an amazing music video. Yes, it's a great video,
Well, that
Billy.
was the thing. I mean, it's upsetting to see where MTV has gone. But I mean, again, Gen Xer. I'm gonna be 54 in 2 weeks, so it's like I remember the first day of MTV. I remember the first bands. I remember those first videos. Pat Benatar, second video.
Wow.
I mean, like I remember all of that stuff, and it was so transformative for the music in general.
Mm,
It put it to another level.
yeah.
If you had a good video, you got popularity. And MTV, that was the thing. That was the bee's knees
Yes.
in 1981. That was it.
It's wild because I was in school for TV broadcasting 2005, 2007. And while I was there was still MTV, there was still much music, and it was still powerful. It was still
Mm-hmm.
a goal of bands then, because we were working with bands at the time when I wasn't in a band, and we were working with bands to try and produce their videos because they wanted a shot to get on
Yeah.
MTV or Much Music before it closed down. Even back then, and you were saying the 80s, but even into the 2000s, and I believe if it had never left, it would still be very popular.
Yeah.
I think that it left because people owned other assets that they wanted this to be out of the way of. Like if
Yeah.
you own Spotify and
I
you
think
own,
MTV got too big for its britches.
yes, I would agree with you on that one. And yeah, in Canada, like I said, it turned into like Much Music. So it wasn't the same. It was just kind of like
Yeah.
a brand thing. But God, that was a different time, right? What the talk,
Totally different time.
the radio talk shows, the Howard Sterns,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was just bizarre. We Ottawa, of course, we sent out Norm Macdonald. He's of course our big
Mm-hmm.
pride, who went to New York and made a big deal because he showed the world what he thought about O.J. Simpson.
Yep.
And when no one would speak the truth, Norm Macdonald always did. So I am proud of Canadians. We are a funny
You,
bunch.
you got a lot of cool
Oh,
people up there,
we're a
or
funny
people who are from
bunch.
there that may still live in LA right now, but their roots are right there.
Well, that's the thing, right? Michael J. Fox, I think, left here when he was like 14,
Yeah.
15 at the oldest. So he left Canada a long time ago. And
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, same thing, when he was like 18, 19. He
Yeah,
was
but you still got Ryan Reynolds. I mean, you got a lot of great people.
It's
And
true.
the music, I realize every time I pull a show and I put together my show, and I'm like, holy crap, okay, that one's from Canada. That's from Canada. That's from Canada. That's from so many Canadian artists that are so like, artists that I didn't even know were from Canada when I'm
Yeah.
doing the show prep for it. I'm like, oh wow, they're from Canada too. I'm like,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we are very artistically expressive. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that. And there is a bevy of great bands, I think, probably in every country all around the world. And
Oh yeah.
years ago when that Rodrigo or whatever that movie was called, Sugar Man,
Oh yeah. Okay.
and he didn't know his whole life that he had hit album in Nigeria. And
It's incredible. It's incredible.
wild, right? Anything can happen when you create really good art and you're really passionate about it.
Yeah, and I love searching new music. And then when I search new music, I'm like, I've been watching all of your podcast episodes, and like, oh, that artist, oh, gotta look at them. I'm like, oh, they can fit, and then I buy their music because that's another
Oh,
thing I do is I buy unless I'm given music by the artist, I make sure to buy their music, even if it's
oh,
just one song. I will buy it because I don't you know, Spotify, okay, it's got a place, but I just think they're horrible to musicians. They really are. And I know you've talked about that. And I'm like, I don't stream that often on Spotify. I have one playlist that I use to work out with. And but I buy the stuff and I listen to my own music on my own devices and stuff like that. And that's the other way that I can support musicians.
absolutely. Yeah, years ago when I went through Napster as a 13-year-old and LimeWire and Metallica was angry and I was busy listening to Dixie Chicks back to the music from the 50s to Michael Jackson to Weird Al. We were
Yeah.
just downloading everything. And like literally and my musical brain just exploded. So
Yeah.
in one way I am so grateful for the technological thing that happened during my life and where I was, and at the other end it's like, yeah, I have to remember that it's like we can't go back. I want to go back. I love the albums. I love
Yeah.
the artistic presentation of it. But who knows what the future
Yeah.
will entail.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Music, but I have to say, what I've noticed in the 3 years that I've been doing Soul of Rock is there has been a shift um in my eyes. Now, maybe it's just because I curate my own show, but I see more and more real talent coming back around.
Mm. Yeah, I
It's
would.
not this produced stuff. It's not this auto tune stuff. It's not this stuff that the record company. I mean, they're still going to do that. You're still going to have the Ariana Grandes. You're still going to have all of these big giant pop stars that are, they got the talent, but they got an awful lot of talent behind them too to make them sound a certain way to fit the mold. Um, but
Totally.
I'm noticing that the more I do research for my show, the more I add new artists to my show, the more I'm realizing how much amazing talent is coming out. I play a lot of bands that are only have like maybe one album or even just a couple singles.
Yeah, it's a lot of work for an independent band to get a good recording. However they come to that, however they get it done, and it's not easy to do.
No,
And
it's expensive too. Studio time is expensive.
very expensive, and it's a process, and the whole process is expensive and taxing, but
Yeah.
it's also super rewarding. I want to say thank you so much to Victoria D or Victoria Stigliana Zuban. And everybody out there, make sure you go and listen to Soul of Rock on Wednesdays between 4 and 6 p.m.
Eastern time. Yeah. 9
Eastern
to
time,
9 to 11
British time. And Victoria's playing rock music, but she's also playing music. She plays Sunday Riot Club and Evil Creek and Taming Starry and
Yep.
all kinds of Canadian music. So get on there and support Soul of Rock at whitehorseradio.net. Also, the Animal Files. So cool. It's a
Yeah.
podcast. Get into it. Dig deep.
We got a
And,
lot of episodes. We're just ending our fourth season, so you can go back in time.
and finally, if you need to get any spiritual guidance in your life, reach out. I'll bet you anything, Victoria will have some guidance for you. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
I
This
hope you
has
had
been a lot
fun.
of fun. Yes.
Awesome. And thank you out there. And we'll see you all next time on All Worn Out. Bye bye, everybody.